It's time for Recipe of the Day. I don't know about you, but as soon as October hits, I start thinking about what is going to be part of our Thanksgiving dinner. And I have been testing this recipe. It is perfection. You are going to love it. It is sausage stuffed baked apples. And I really like it because it's individually portioned. Each person gets one apple half. I love that for a buffet spread or just any kind of dinner. You just know exactly how many you need. And I just love stuffing, the kind of stuffing that we have with our turkey dinners. And this one puts that stuffing, a delicious sausage stuffing, inside of the apples. So it just makes it more special, that already delicious side dish from Thanksgiving, even better. And I think possibly the best thing about them is that they're just so pretty. So they make the whole dinner look more beautiful. You know, you put these on the table, put them on the plate, and it just upgrades everything to a beautiful harvest festival, you know? Okay, to make these, you are starting with a pound of mild sweet Italian ground pork sausage. I really like the Italian flavors in here because they have all those wonderful herbs and the fennel. I just love fennel. And in particular, our sponsor, Coleman All Natural Meats, their mild sweet Italian ground pork sausage has anise in it as well, which is just that little bit of warming spice. So I know it sounds like, oh, we're going in a strange direction, Italian sausage in this stuffing, but it just has all of those delicious flavors that go so well with the turkey dinner. And in this case in particular, that marriage of sweet and savory. We're going to have those sweet apples, and that's going to go really nice with that anise kind of flavor in the sausage. And then also, of course, this is a stuffing, and so we want those meatier herby flavors. So it's just all in there. Perfect marriage of sweet and savory. And I will also just say that when you are choosing your Italian sausage, Coleman is such a perfect choice because it tastes so good, but also because they use humanely raised pork with no added hormones. You know you are making a great choice. So you are starting with a pound of that sausage in a large skillet over medium-high heat. Add the sausage to there and spread it out. And I will just say, this is the ground sausage that is kind of like ground beef in how it looks in a package. If you can't get that and you have sausage links, you can use them. Just take the casings off, and then you're going to cook them just like we're saying and break them up as you cook them. So either of those will work. I just find that the ground pork sausage is easier to work with because you don't have to remove the casings, and the way that it is, it's just easier to break into the crumbles. Okay, so either one that you have, you are putting it in there and kind of spreading it out and letting it cook undisturbed for a couple of minutes, and then start flipping and stirring and breaking it into crumbles and continue to cook it for 2 to 3 more minutes, just until it's no longer pink inside. Then remove it from the heat. Next is the bread for the stuffing, and I'll say I've tested this with a few different kinds of bread and have decided that kind of a crunchy light bread is better than anything heavy. I did it with brioche and with focaccia, and they were just both too rich with the sausage and all the flavors going on. It was too much. So you want something just a little bit more neutral. I really like a ciabatta roll for this, and my store sells them. They're 3 ounces each, just about, and I used 2 of them. Any kind of plain white sandwich bread or crusty bread baguette, anything like that's going to work. And you're going to want about 4.5 cups of 1/2 inch cubes once you start cubing them up. So if it's ciabatta rolls, you want 2 3-ounce rolls, or you're just going to keep chopping up your bread into 1/2 inch cubes until you have 4.5 cups of it. Put that bread into a large bowl, and then I really like a little bit of Fontina cheese in here, just a little creaminess. You can skip the cheese if you want to make this dairy-free, or you can use a different nicely melting cheese like a mozzarella or a provolone. Provolone's going to add a little bit more flavor. Fontina's nice because it's melty and creamy and has a little nuttiness, which goes so well with the apples and with all those flavors from the sausage I was talking about. So it's 3 ounces of Fontina. You're going to thinly slice that and then cut the slices into little 1/2 inch pieces and add that to the bowl of bread along with 2 teaspoons of chopped fresh rosemary. You could use dry if you wanted to. It would be 1 teaspoon then. And also a teaspoon of fennel seeds that you crush. So the easiest way to do that is in a mortar or pestle. If you don't have one and can't crush them, you can leave them in whole. They're going to be okay like that too. Crushing them just spreads them out a little bit more through the bread mixture. Okay, and also add a 1/2 teaspoon of salt to the bread, and then stir stir in all of that cooked sausage. Now, I will say that the Coleman Italian sausage doesn't tend to have that much fat coming out of it, so you do not have to drain off the fat if it's just a little bit. If your sausage has more fat coming out of it, then you're going to need to drain that off. You don't want it super fatty, okay? So you're adding the sausage to the bread mixture and stirring that all together. Preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and you're going to zest and juice a lemon. Mix those together along with another half teaspoon of salt. I'm going to say you're not going to end up using this whole mixture, but that's just the easiest way to get it together. We're going to use that mixture to brush on the cut apples so that they don't brown as quickly, but also just that little bit of acidity and salt and lemon flavor actually makes the dish come together really, really well. Otherwise, the sweetness of the apple and the bread stuffing, they just don't quite work together. The first couple times I made this, I didn't do the lemon and salt, and I can tell you for sure it made a huge difference, so don't skip that. Okay, next up is the apples, and I tested this with a few different kinds and different sizes, and I'm going to tell you that the small Gala apples are the best ones. They're like crunchy, they keep their texture a little bit, but softened too, and they have just the right amount of sweetness, not too sweet, and not tart. You don't want anything really sour here. Now, when I say small Gala apples, they're the ones that are often sold in a bag, and the bag will even say what the dimension of the apples are. You're looking for something that is about 2.5 inches in diameter or smaller. And the reason is just that's how much stuffing we're making is enough for 6 of these apples, but also it's just the right amount of cooking time and like portion size. As I got into bigger apples, it was just like too much apple, too much stuffing. So 6 of the small 2.5 inch diameter Gala apples are exactly what you want. You're going to cut those apples in half and then use a melon baller to scoop out the core and a little bit of the flesh, leaving just kind of like a 1/2 inch around the sides and bottom. Transfer them to a baking dish, like a 9 by 13 inch baking dish, and then brush the cut surfaces and hollows with a little bit of that lemon mixture, trying to get a few little threads of that zest into each one, but mostly brushing with that salted lemon juice. And then once you've done all of the apples, then you can discard the leftover lemon mixture. And at this point, you will have 12 halved apples sitting cut side up in your baking dish. Now, at this point, you're going to test if your stuffing is the right texture. Because you might be using different bread, I can't control it exactly. We need this to be somewhat moist so that it holds its shape. So what you're going to do is give that stuffing mixture another stir and then take some of it into the palm of your hand and give it a squeeze. If it kind of holds its shape, then it's moist enough just from the sausage moisture that has come out into the stuffing. If, on the other hand, it kind of just crumbles and falls apart, you're going to need to add some moisture, and it's going to be 1 to 3 tablespoons of either milk or broth or water. So if your stuffing is not moist enough, drizzle 1 tablespoon of the liquid on there, give it a stir, and then do the squeeze test again, and just keep adding 1 tablespoon at a time until it just holds the shape. And I will tell you that the blog post for this recipe has a video in it already, and you can see me do that test in the video. I will put the link to that video in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. It is the episode for October 7th of 2025. So you'll be able to find that video and see me do that test if you're not sure what I mean. Okay, once you have your stuffing in that sort of nice, moist enough texture, you're going to get a 1/4 cup measuring cup and you're going to stuff, like firmly pack that stuffing into there. That's how much you're putting into each apple. So stuff it into the 1/4 cup measuring cup, then invert that into the palm of your hand, give it a little squeeze, and then push that onto one of the halved apples. That's going to get it into the hollow and make a little mound on top of your apple half. And then you're just going to repeat that with all of the apples till all 12 of them are topped. Then they're going into that 375 degree Fahrenheit oven just until the apples are fork tender and the tops are lightly browned. Because the stuffing was already cooked, the sausage was already cooked, you're not worrying about anything like that. Once they are brown on top, you can take a skewer or a fork and just test that an apple is soft, and they'll be done. It's about 30 to 35 minutes. Now, I'm going to say that once they're done, there's a little garnish. That is not just a garnish. It really brings all the flavors together and makes this dish even prettier and even more delicious. What you're going to do is warm up 2 teaspoons of honey in the microwave just so that it's easier to drizzle. That's why we're warming it up. And you're going to drizzle that all over the tops of those stuffed apples, getting it on the stuffing, just a drizzle like from a spoon, going quickly across over top, maybe like 6 inches above them, back and forth. And then you're going to sprinkle them with a little bit of kosher salt. It's about 1/2 teaspoon total. You're just going to take little pinches of it and sprinkle it. Any kind of coarse salt is going to work here. And then then you're going to use another 2 teaspoons of chopped fresh rosemary and sprinkle that on top. You can't use dried here though. If you don't have the fresh rosemary, I say just skip it. It's really the honey and the salt that bring those flavors together so much right there. The only other thing that I'll say about this is, as a whole, it is not a great make-ahead dish because the apples are going to brown and they're not going to keep their texture nicely. Like if you bake it ahead of time, the apples aren't going to have a good texture. And if you like make it ahead and keep it in the fridge till you're ready to cook it, they are going to brown a little bit and change their texture. But you can make the sausage stuffing ahead up to 3 days in advance. So you can make that sausage stuffing ahead of time, have it in the fridge, ready to go. And then just when you're ready to make this is when you cut the apples, scoop out the cores, brush them with the lemon mixture, and then stuff them and bake them. So you can do part of it ahead of time. Okay, I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is October 7th of 2025. And I want to say a big thank you to Coleman All Natural Meats for sponsoring this episode and the recipe on the site, the video, all of it. I really appreciate them and I love their products so much. Their humanely raised pork products are delicious and consistent. You can trust them. I love them. Look for them in your grocery stores. Coleman All Natural Meats. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.